Hey everybody, this is Amy Coleman'sberger, and this is my third Facebook Live. I have done two in the month of February. One of them was on capacity, why your capacity does not equal your calling. And my other one was how I use Sunday planning to help me live out of my priorities. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that I have always been passionate about. Well, I shouldn't say always. For probably 11 years is the concept of margin. And so today I want to talk to you about why we need margin and five ways that we can start creating margin in our lives. Just a little bit about myself. I am married to Mike, and we are about to celebrate our 20th anniversary in May, and we have 6 children ranging from 18 down to 5. We homeschool them, and they go to a 2-day-a-week homeschool hybrid, so 5 out of the 6 of them are gone on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So, hey Mitz. And I blog at middlemercies.com, and that is where I write hope and encouragement for women in the middle years of life and faith and parenting. And as I thought about the topic of margin, I thought the middle years are the space where we need margin the most. The middle years are the years where your kids are involved in extracurricular activities, or you have teenagers coming in and out of your home. You are emotionally pouring out all the time through training and teaching and guiding. It's a very verbal stage of life. A lot of us may have aging parents that we need to take care of. And so I think where the middle years finds us is in a space of caregiving. These are the years where sometimes we are carrying on both ends. We've got young children, we've got middle school children, we've got teenagers, we might have children who are married, we might be a new grandmother, we have aging parents that we're trying to take care of. And so there are so many demands on our time and our energy and our space. And it is very easy in this season of life to overextend ourselves and not recognize that we have very real limits. And so I typed up some notes this morning. So if I seem like I'm reading a lot, it's because I really want to stay focused on my notes and don't want to do too many rabbit trails, which I know I'm prone to do. And I want to make sure that I hit on some of the key things that I wanted to say. So I hit a period of burnout when my 4th child was about a year old, and it was a very dark, challenging time. I was very disillusioned and depressed. I was exhausted. We had so many circumstances in our lives that came together to just make a perfect storm. And it was at that point that I read Dr. Richard Swenson's book, Margin, and that book will probably forever stay on my top 5 lists of books that people need to read, because it really showed me how I could live healthier by creating margin in my life, to fill my well, and to take care of myself. As women or as mothers, you are the spiritual, emotional, and physical well that your family draws from. And so taking care of yourself must be a priority. And the problem is that we lead overscheduled lives and overstimulated lives now with the advent of the smartphone. And so when someone says to us, add self-care to your already overscheduled, overstimulated life, there is no space for that. The foundation of being able to take care of yourself well so that you can love people well is margin. We've got to create space in our lives to rest and recharge and to sleep and renew. So until we can make margin in our days and in our schedules, we're actually not going to be able to take care of ourselves and therefore our people well. So what is margin? Margin is white space. Margin is the space on the piece of paper that gives the words room to breathe so that we can actually read them and see them. White space in our schedules is having time and room in our day for prayer, for an unexpected phone call, for reading a chapter of our favorite book, for reading a chapter of our children's favorite books to them, for being able to put a meal on the table, for being able to go to bed and get a decent night's sleep. It's having breathing room in your life. Dr. Richard Swenson says margin is the space between our load and our limits. It is the amount allowed beyond that which is needed. It is something held in reserve for contingencies or unanticipated situations. Margin is the gap between rest and exhaustion, the space between breathing freely and suffocating. And I know for most of us, we can think of seasons where we have felt like we are exhausted and suffocating. And that can be for a very short season. That is normal. But if that is the chronic space in which you live, you will hit burnout. Burnout is simply chronic stress over time. So stress is going to come into our lives, but it should be a short season where we can manage it and we have the adrenal reserves that we need and the wellness reserves that we need so that we can handle when life brings us stressors. But if that's how we live for years on end, we are going to be awful people. Exhausted, irritable, angry, anxious, depressed, overwhelmed, overextended, and ultimately it leads to very severe health problems. So, why do we need margin? Simply put, without it, our physical, emotional, and spiritual health suffers. We will run so hard and so fast that we will suffer from burnout. If you're wondering whether or not you have burnout, you can Google symptoms of burnout, and there are many great articles to help you recognize that your exhaustion and illnesses, anxiety, and anger may be due to that. Margin is a wise management of our energy. That's what margin is. We're being wise and we're managing the energy and the personality and the limitations that God has given us. My passion in life is to live well so that I can love well. And loving God and loving others is the foundation of what God commands us. It's what He tells us in the New Testament. Love God and love others. It's the most important things. And you cannot love well if your life is empty and depleted and stressed and shallow. And we often confuse a full schedule with a full life. And I talked a lot about this in my first Facebook Live on why capacity doesn't equal calling. So some of this is overlap. Creating margin is an acknowledgement that we are but dust, that we have real God-given limits according to our personalities, our life circumstances, our physiological and emotional makeup, and by the very fact that we are human. We are not God with infinite resources at our disposal. And when we think about margin, and the fact that we have limits, that we have very real emotional, physical, and spiritual limits, who is our model in that? It's Christ. The infinite God, Jesus, who had all power and all provision, chose to become a baby. And a baby is the essence of limits. A baby can't do anything for themselves. They're totally dependent to be fed and to be put to sleep and to be cared for. And the big, giant, infinite God of the universe chose to have limits. And He chose a life to become incarnated that required rest, that required retreat, that required food and friendship. Jesus required all of those things. He took time away to be with the Father regularly. He retreated regularly. He dined with people, and He cooked fish on the beach. He was fully human. So, and I love in Mark 6:31, Jesus says, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." And so what I want you to see today is that the invitation to margin and to rest is the invitation of Christ to us. He says, I see all the work that you're doing. I see all the love that you are pouring out. Come away by yourself to a desolate place and rest a while. And you can't find that rest unless you make space in your life for that. Jesus had space in His day to stop and attend to needs. he got up one morning and he was asked by Jairus to come and heal his daughter. He didn't know that was the plan for that day. And so he's going and he's walking and he's not in a hurry. He's not in a rush. And in the midst of the crowd, the woman with the issue of blood touches him. Now, he could have been overscheduled, too busy. I've got a plan. I got to go. But you know what? He stopped and he turned around and he said, "Who touched me?" And in that space, he took time to see her, to acknowledge her, to heal her. And he wasn't hurried when he did that. And then he was able to turn back and go to raise Jairus' daughter from the dead. And Jesus lived on purpose, but he was never hurried and never too busy. So Jesus is our model for a life lived with margin, listening to the Father as to how we should spend our days. One small caveat that I wanted to say was there is a difference between living slow and living lazy. And a slow life with built-in margin is ordered, it's focused, it's purposeful with having wide margins so that we can live intentional lives according to our priorities and have space to obey the prompts of the Spirit. Living lazy is disordered, haphazard, and avoidance of work and self-protection. So there is a big difference in living a slower life filled with margin and rest and listening than escapism, self-protection, hiding. I've done both, so I definitely know the difference. I'm not above any of that on any given day. And so I know when I'm being lazy and when I am abiding in the Spirit and leaving room for Him in my life. So there is lots to be said about creating margin, and there's lots of different ways that we can create margin in our lives, but I'm going to give you just 5 ways that I wrote down of ways that you can create margin in your lives in the middle of your very real responsibilities and priorities. Number 1, and so if you have your bullet journal that we talked about or a piece of paper, you can come back later and listen to the replay, but write this stuff down and sometime in the next week, get away with the Lord and pray about each one of these things and where you can make some of this applicable in your own life. So number 1 is pay attention to your energy levels. I've been reading a lot about our cycles lately and our hormones. I talked about that last time, PMS and all that good stuff. And, you know, men are on a 24-hour hormone reboot. It takes them 24 hours to get back to where they were. Women, we are on a 28-day cycle. And so every week of that cycle looks completely different. And our first week is usually high in creativity and brainstorming. After ovulation, that's usually a good time for task completion and focused time for projects. And then as you get closer to your period, that is when you need to start taking care of yourself even more. So that week you see on your calendar that's coming, that's where you need to make more room in your schedule. You need to say no more often. You need to set your own firm boundaries. Otherwise, you are going to be so irritated and mean and yuck. And God made our bodies on this 28-day cycle. I don't know all the reasons why, but He did. And each week gives women a different energy level, a different strength, a different gift. Menstrual time is usually a time where you're very big picture, you're quiet, and you have space to evaluate your life. Now, America doesn't give us the luxury of setting up our schedules according to our periods. Wouldn't that be nice? But they don't. But as much as we can understand our energy levels as it relates to our cycles, we can build in margin according to our energy levels during the month. And so this week, I am in week 1. So I have creativity and I'm brainstorming and I'm writing ideas for lots of different things that I want to be working on. But let me tell you, right before I started, awful, quiet, sad, irritated, and I just needed to make my schedule quieter. So pay attention to your energy levels. What parts of the day are you more energized? Schedule your most important work then, and then honor the times of day when you are more tired. We do not need to have a full day of production, y'all. Work hard in the hours that God has given you, the tasks for the day, and then you don't have to keep going all day at a crazy, frantic rate. You can read books to your kids. Then when you're feeling more tired, turn off your phone. Add things that rejuvenate you. Take 30 minutes to, do yoga poses, which is what I've been doing, and breathe some essential oils. Go for a walk. The whole day is not production. I think we work in the mornings and we rest a little after lunch. I love the cultures that take their siesta. I think they're brilliant. I think we could all use more siestas. How I do that is I don't do it every day, but most days I institute a quiet hour every afternoon. And I don't have kids that are napping age anymore, but everybody has a quiet hour, and no one person is in the same room with another because I want no talking. So I have kids that go out to the trampoline. I have a child that sits in the living room. I have been known to put a child in my master bathroom in the bathtub with pillows and an audiobook to give them quiet space. But if you start building a rhythm of your children having a quiet hour every afternoon, if you homeschool, it will go so far into building some margin in your day for rest and reflection and rejuvenation. And then the witching hour, which is usually like that 3:30 to 5:30, shouldn't be as awful if you're having some space in the afternoon. Also pay attention to what season of the year it is. Winter is a lower energy time of the year, and spring and summer are more active. And our bodies and energy respond to the warmth and sunlight and how many hours of light there is. So we need to be mindful that there is a time for everything, and that our output in life may not look the same in the winter as it does in the summer. And so honor the seasons, honor your energy levels during the day, and honor your cycle. So that's paying attention to your energy levels to create more space. Number 2 is be realistic about time and Murphy's Law. And we all know Murphy's Law is if something can go bad, it will. And it just does, because we live in a broken world where things fall apart and things don't go as planned. So be underscheduled. Leave space in your day and the week for the unexpected. We all know that cars break down, children get sick, crises arrive. If possible, batch your errands and do them all on the same day. That will leave more space in your week because you won't be entering and exiting your car constantly like I do, to go to Aldi, to go to Walgreens, to run to the Walmart pickup. If we batch our errands into one specific day, that's going to give us more time in the week, not to necessarily do more, but to have space. Some people who work from home schedule all their phone calls and meetings for Thursdays, so that their work days or writing days that are Tuesday and Wednesday are uninterrupted. So don't schedule all those things throughout your week. Pick one day for office work and do all those things in one day, so that your other days are quieter and more focused and productive to do the work that you need to do and then to rest. I try not to schedule any daytime appointments on Mondays. I use that day to regroup my home from the weekend, to finish up homeschooling work for my children's hybrid school, and to begin my week as gently and quietly as possible. And by not having anything scheduled on that day, my week begins on my terms and not on outside pressures. And a very calm Monday tends to lend itself to a calmer week. Not always, of course. Nothing in life is A plus B equals C, but it definitely helps a lot to keep your Mondays as quiet and sane as possible. Another great tip that I read that I would love to learn and grow in, which I don't do this, but I'm getting slowly better at it and working towards it, is the 15-minute rule. It's giving yourself an extra 15 minutes in the mornings or when you go someplace. It's the difference in being able to get some hot tea or coffee in the mornings, stretching, reading a few pages of a book or the Bible, or praying. It's getting to the school drop-off early so that you have room and space to leave your child without that frantic, anxious stress space, but in a calm sending of them off for their day. Get 15 minutes early to church so that you have time to settle in. Get a cup of coffee if they serve it, or donuts, or to talk to some people, and then just have time to sit in your chair or your pew in quiet, preparing your heart to hear the word and to worship. Get 15 minutes early to the airport so that you can get through security without a bunch of stress. Give yourself the 15-minute buffer before you have people over so that you're completely done and ready for them at least 15 minutes before they get there, so that you have time to be at peace and to welcome them without a harried demeanor. Some people schedule their work in 90-minute chunks where they have the first 15 minutes is to get settled and organized and focused, and then they work really hard for 60 minutes, and then 15 minutes at the end to evaluate and wrap things up. So you're really working hard for 60 minutes, but you've included that 30-minute buffer for your runway time and your landing time. Number 3 is move away from last-minute living. Here's just a few things that I have found that have given me less stress and more space. Is dinner prep early in the day, if possible. I stink at that. And meal planning. Having a plan, having the groceries that you need goes far to building a margin in your life so that you're actually able to get dinner on the table and to enjoy a meal with your family. The next thing is get gas in your car when you are at 1/4 of a tank and you have time and space to do it. Don't rush to an appointment with your car on E and feel the stress of pushing it or needing to stop and then being late. So give yourself the margin to get to appointments early or on time by having your gas tank not running on E. This is a habit that I started a few years ago, and it is glorious. Once I see that thing hit 1/4 of a tank, I think, it's just time. I have time right now. I just left the library. I'm going to go fill up my car. I don't need to live life on E. I can live it with margin. Another thing is setting out your children's clothes at night before school. I totally stunk at that for a long time. We would try to get our kids out for their school with trying to find like 5 kids' clothes and shoes and backpacks. Stupid. So now for the last year, everybody's clothes are laid out no matter what, Monday nights and Tuesday nights. All the shoes are found because in a large family, we lose all the shoes. We make sure all the socks are found and clean and laying out, and we try to do some lunch prep too. That doesn't always happen, but we at least know that we have what we need to make lunches in the morning. And the last thing under moving away from last minute living is keep cash on hand. Have you ever noticed that you just need cash for certain things? You need to pay someone $20 for something, or I don't know. I just always feel like we live in such a debit card world, and life seems so much easier and more manageable when I have like $50 in my wallet. We go to Boy Scouts and we need $40 to pay for our dinner there. And I had the money. I didn't have to rush right before we were trying to get there to the bank to get cash out and blah, 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 blah. I always try to keep cash on hand. And that has reduced a lot of stress in my life. So number 4, turn off your phone for a few hours each day. Now, when I say turn off your phone, I don't literally mean turn off your phone. I mean, on the iPhone, I don't know if other phones have it, but if you scroll up from the bottom, you get this little screen and there's a little crescent-shaped moon. That's Do Not Disturb. And I have my phone on Do Not Disturb for hours each day. In our hyper-accessible society, we are constantly switching our focus from one thing that we're doing to a beep, a ding, or a notification. If we switch our phone to Do Not Disturb for a few hours, we are able to work so much more effectively and more focused. We can clean our kitchen without interruption. When you commit to doing one task at a time, it reduces so much anxiety and scattered thinking. We are really becoming more and more ADD with constantly shifting our focus. And so I have found that Do Not Disturb is one of my best friends. Now, if you're scared that an emergency is going to happen and you won't be able to be reached, whoever is in your contacts under favorites, their phone calls to you will go through. And so if Mike calls me while my phone is on Do Not Disturb, it will ring and I can answer it. And so there need not be fear that something bad has happened and that you've missed it. Because your phone's not on Do Not Disturb. But you will find so much more space in your day if you will commit to a few hours of Do Not Disturb, and that will give you space to pray, to think, to reorient your day, to be very present with your children and not to your telephone. I'm not saying all day. I'm not saying 5 hours. I'm saying like 1 to 2 hours. Try 30 minutes of Do Not Disturb and then see what kind of space that gives you in your day. I spent years with my dings going off, and I almost lost my mind. Like a year ago, I had a basically epic meltdown over the hyper accessibility that I had with my phone to others and their accessibility to me. And so now I think people can wait. It's more important for me to live healthy and well and not scattered and unfocused. And when you sleep at night, something that I've started doing that's helped a lot to get better sleep and a better wake up is to charge my phone in a separate room. And of course you're saying, that's my alarm clock. Well, I had that excuse too. Now I don't need an alarm clock, but if I do, I usually Mike sets his. But y'all can buy cheap alarm clocks. They still exist. Walgreens sells them. And it's a game changer to begin your day without the noise of the internet. I cannot not grab my phone if it's on my nightstand and not look at social media when I wake up. I am too weak of a soul. Let's just admit it. I'm weak. I'm undisciplined. I cannot do it. So instead of giving up, I just plug my phone into the office. That's what I do now every night, and I wake up every morning and I'm not scrolling and I'm not seeing. And in that space, I do my Lent journal, and I read scripture, and I drink a cup of hot tea, and I just am with the Lord and chat with Mike. And it is glorious, and my mind is so calm and unstressed and undistracted, and I'm not from the get-go bearing the weight of people's political thoughts or their bad night with their kids. You know, all great things that I'd love to hear about, but not right when I wake up. Right when I wake up is like my foundation of my day. And so if we clear the space of social media out from the very first thing that we gravitate towards and give that first 30 minutes or so to just being, you will feel so much better. And you're not even then as prone to go find your phone after that. That's what I've found is I'm like, I don't even want to go look. I'm feeling so good now that I just want to go clean up my kitchen and get things going and start knocking out my to-do list. And you know, it takes a while then for me to even want to check it. So you'll sleep so much better without your phone next to you, and you will wake up so much better without it next to you. That's the biggest thing. The last thing, number 5, is guard your schedule. And of course, this is like the linchpin for margin. My challenge in this is when you're planning your week, schedule in self-care and family time in your priorities first. They should get first priority. That is the key. And then when opportunities come for your week to start filling up your schedule, ask, will this activity really make my family or me happier or healthier? And you need to then wait and pray. Don't say yes immediately. You need to wait, even if it's a good thing. And I think that's what's so hard is for so many of us who have hearts for people and for service and for ministry that we confuse really good things with things that we should do. Or I think that a great idea that comes to me, like a revelation of sorts, means immediate obedience. And I've confused that, and that's just not true. Revelation does not equal obedience. Sometimes it's a wait. Sometimes God is just giving you something to do, but it's not yet. You need to discern the timing of things. And so it's the good things that end up robbing us of living our lives in the great things. And so We need to remember that no is a complete sentence. And when I say that, what I mean is that you don't have to tell people why or justify your decision when you tell them no. Like, I'll be asked, can you do, say, this thing Tuesday at 2? Can you watch my kids Tuesday at 2? And I know that I've already scheduled Tuesdays to be days where I don't do anything outside of my home. So I don't have to tell my friend, no, I can't because, and justify my no, because I'm busy or I need to homeschool my son or I've got things going on. I don't need to justify why I said no. I'm allowed to say no. It's my time and my day. And if I discern, nope, I need to keep this a priority, then I just say no. But I hope that you find somebody. And so no can be a complete sentence. We don't have to justify our no's. And we need to ask ourselves, if we're prone to overscheduling, are we trying to win the approval of men or of God? Are you an approval addict? And I struggle with that. My personality type, ESFJ, tends towards being an approval addict. And so I've needed to weigh over the years, am I trying to gain approval from others by saying yes to this? Or is approval from God enough? Because He approved of us on the cross. There is nothing we can gain, nothing we can do or not do to gain or lose His approval. It happened through Christ. And as much as possible, receive the gift of Sabbath. This is so big on scheduling, and I know I'm talking a lot about that this year, but it's something that God brought up to me the final week of 2016 that I have begun really implementing and guarding in 2017, and it's a game changer, as all things in Scripture are. God offers the gift of Sabbath to us every week. God doesn't give us Sabbath as a set of rules or as something to do. It's a gift. He's saying, would you like some rest and some margin and some peace? Every week, here is Sabbath. Are you going to receive it? And Sabbath is an act of faith. That we can leave things undone and incomplete, and that He is in control, that He never slumbers or sleeps, and He is taking care of our lives. He offers us 24 hours of rest and delight and presence and trust. And God, in Genesis, when He got done creating, He created Sabbath. He took Sabbath Himself. He's the infinite one, the perfect one, the one without limits. He took a Sabbath rest. So if we, in our smallness and brokenness with such limits, why do we have the pride that thinks that we don't need it if the God of the universe created it and took Sabbath? We, if anything, are so desperate for it. We are so small. We are so needy. We overestimate ourselves. We overestimate our energy, our abilities. We overestimate ourselves in doing God's work, and He is giving you an amazing gift every single week. And it may not be on Sundays. Your Sabbath might be on Saturdays. It might be Tuesdays. But I think the principle in Scripture is that He offers His people a weekly rest. And so that's the most beautiful margin that we could ever receive. So it's already there for you. We just have to receive it and trust Him with that day. So to recap, the 5 ways to create margin are pay attention to your energy levels, be realistic about time and Murphy's Law, move away from last minute living, turn off your phone, put it on Do Not Disturb for a few hours each day, and guard your schedule. And who is our model? Christ is. He became man with limits, like we did, and He submitted to those limits, and He chose rest and retreat, and then engagement, and then retreat again, and He had a life that wasn't hurried. He was able to meet people's needs because He was filled up and listening to the Father and not too busy and too purposed and overscheduled. Margin doesn't just show up in our lives. It's not going to magically land on you. Margin must be cultivated. And you're not going to be able to do all of these steps immediately, Remember that we cultivate things little by little over time. But we can pray and ask God today, what is the one thing from this list that I can begin to cultivate? And I love that. Years ago in BSF, I went when my two oldest were really small. And one of the main things I took away from that teacher in Kentucky was one week she said, you know, we take frantic notes when we listen to a speaker and we try to get all the things down and we want to apply them all and then we can't do it. And she said, God is giving you one thing out of what I said today that he wants to offer you and invite you into. And so I offer you that like she offered that to me years ago. You may have written down a bunch of things. Ask the Lord, what's the one thing, Lord, that I can do to cultivate space in my life for relationship with you and for others, to live a life where my well is filled and brimming and spilled over for the people that I love? Where can I begin to create more space for that? And like I said, if we want to love well, which I know we all do, we want to love the Lord and we want to love others well, then we need to live well within our limits. And we trust God with our little 5 loaves and 2 fishes that we bring every day. And then he multiplies that small offering to feed many people. So I hope that something in here encouraged you or gave you freedom, grace. I used to view God as such a taskmaster and that he was so hard and exacting and wanted me to do all the things. And I am learning more and more that God is an inviter and he invites me into being versus doing. He's inviting me into relationship, into comfort, into rest. And as I accept and humble myself really to accept my humanness and to receive those gifts from him, I am so filled up that I don't have to work then at loving people. It can just come out and flow to my family and to my friends and to my community. So here is to receiving God's good gifts of margin and space and living well so that we can love others well. And I hope you have a beautiful Tuesday today, and I will be in the comment box. I will go read all your comments right now and respond. I don't do that during the lives because it's just too distracting for me, but I will comment now. So I hope you have a beautiful day. And again, you can find me at middlemercies.com, and you can find me on Instagram at Amy Coleman'sberger, which is super hard to spell, but if you're following me here, you can see how to spell it. So have a lovely day.